Here's a moment we all face. A moment when everything feels like it's slipping. The argument that spirals out of control. The phone call that changes your plans. The silence in a room that suddenly feels louder than your thoughts. And in that moment, the mind screams one question. What do I do now? We think control means fixing the outside world. But what if real control begins inside, in the space between what happens and what we do next? Most people spend their lives trying to manage the chaos around them. They plan, predict, and push, believing that if they can just keep everything stable, they'll finally feel calm. But here's the paradox. The more you try to control everything outside you, the less control you actually feel inside. Because the truth is, the world doesn't bend to our plans. Traffic will jam. People will disappoint. The unexpected will always arrive. And yet some people move through that same chaos with composure, clarity, even grace. What do they know that we don't? Let's start in the brain. When something stressful happens, a threat, a conflict, or even a harsh comment, your amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm system, lights up like a warning siren. It's ancient, powerful, and fast. It floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline, preparing you to fight, flee, or freeze. But here's the catch. That same surge also shuts down parts of your prefrontal cortex, the logical, calm, problem-solving area of your brain. That's why, in the heat of the moment, we say things we regret, make rash decisions, or freeze in confusion. We lose access to our best self, not because we're weak, but because our biology takes the wheel. So, control isn't about suppressing emotions. It's about retraining your brain to pause long enough for your logic to catch up. In the 1960s, psychologist Julian Rotter introduced the concept of the locus of control. He found that people fall on a spectrum. On one end, those with an external locus believe life happens to them. Fate, luck, other people decide their outcomes. On the other, those with an internal locus believe their choices shape their destiny. That even when the world is unfair, how they respond still defines their path. Over decades of research, studies showed that people with a strong internal locus tend to be happier, healthier, and more resilient. Not because life is easier for them, but because they focus their energy where it matters. Their actions, their mindset, their response. So control begins with one shift. Stop asking, why is this happening to me? Start asking, what can I do with what's happening? Few stories capture this truth like that of Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor. During his imprisonment in Nazi concentration camps, Frankl lost everything: his family, his freedom, and almost his life. Yet even in the darkest conditions imaginable, he discovered something extraordinary. That while everything can be taken from a person, every possession, every comfort, every freedom, there remains one final freedom: the freedom to choose one's attitude in any circumstance. He wrote later, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response, and in our response lies our growth and our freedom. Frankl's lesson is timeless. We cannot always choose our situations, but we can always choose who we become inside them. That is the essence of control. So how do we reclaim that power in our own lives? Not in theory, but in practice. It begins with awareness. Imagine a ship in a storm. The waves crash, the wind howls, and the captain knows he cannot control the sea, but he can control the rudder, the angle of the sails, the steadiness of his breath. He focuses not on calming the storm, but on steering through it. That's the same principle of psychological self-regulation. Here's how you can begin. 1. Pause before you react. Even 3 seconds of conscious breathing can lower amygdala activity and re-engage your rational brain. When you feel triggered, stop. Take a slow inhale through your nose, count to 4, hold for 2, exhale for 6. It's not about calming down. It's about regaining access to your thinking self. 2. Label the emotion. Research from UCLA found that when you name what you feel, I'm angry, I'm scared, I feel rejected, your brain literally reduces activity in the emotional centers and increases activity in the logic centers. Naming gives shape to chaos. 3. Shift the focus. Ask, what can I influence right now? You can't control someone's opinion, but you can control your tone. You can't control the past, but you can control the next action. That's where power lives, in the next move, not the last one. Taking control isn't a one-time act. It's a daily discipline. It's built in small, consistent ways. How you start your mornings, how you talk to yourself, how you respond to mistakes. Let's talk about a few practical tools. The pause, observe, respond method. When stress hits, most of us jump straight from trigger to reaction. Pause creates space. Observe gives clarity. Respond restores control. Even a 10-second gap between reaction and response rewires your emotional circuitry over time. Reframe control as choice. You don't control outcomes, but you always control intention. Replace I have to with I choose to. It turns pressure into empowerment. There's a reason so many of us struggle with control. Our brains are wired for prediction. We crave certainty. When the future feels unknown, the mind fills in blanks with fear. That's why people overthink. It's not weakness. It's the brain trying to find safety in the only way it knows, by imagining every possible outcome. But overthinking doesn't prevent pain. It prolongs it. Control comes not from knowing every possibility, but from trusting. You can handle whichever one arrives. That's real confidence. And it's built through evidence. Every time you survive something you thought you couldn't, your brain learns. I can handle this. That's how resilience is built, one storm at a time. We often lose the most control not with events, but with people. You can't force someone to understand you. You can't make them change. But you can control your boundaries, your communication, and your energy. Psychologist Albert Ellis said it best. You largely control your emotions by how you interpret what happens to you. So when someone hurts or disappoints you, shift your focus from their behavior to your interpretation of it. Ask, what story am I telling myself right now? That small question can dissolve half of your anger. Sometimes control doesn't mean gripping tighter. It means loosening your hold. Think of a clenched fist, tense, rigid, unyielding. Now think of an open hand, aware, ready, flexible. The open hand can still hold what matters, but it's also free to let go when the time comes. Letting go isn't weakness, it's trust. It's saying, I can't control this outcome, but I can control how I move through it. And that shift changes everything. Let's look again at Viktor Frankl. He didn't control his captors, his suffering, or his loss, but he controlled his meaning. He turned his pain into purpose, founding a form of therapy called logotherapy, built on the belief that humans can endure almost anything if they find meaning within it. That's the highest form of control, not resistance, but transcendence. So when you face your own chaos, the rejection, the loss, the uncertainty, remember, your power lies not in what happens to you, but in what you make of it. When you understand control at its deepest level, you stop trying to dominate life and start collaborating with it. Control is not rigidity, it's rhythm. It's learning to move with what comes, to bend without breaking, to respond without retreating. It's what the Stoics meant when they said, "We can't control the wind, but we can adjust our sails." That's all control ever was, steering, not stopping the storm. So, how do you take control of any situation? You don't control the situation. You control the space within it, the breath between reaction and response, the story you tell yourself, the calm you choose to create. Control isn't about power. It's about presence. It's the quiet confidence that no matter what comes, you will meet it with clarity and strength. And maybe, just maybe, that's the kind of control we were meant to have all along.